I know a lot of you, but I'm Catherine Coles. I'm a poet, and Sarah's co-moderator. I'm in the English department here at the University of Utah. And as the panelists have been talking, it has occurred to me that in a different room full of people, I would feel confident that I was the only one who was lucky enough to have been funded by 3 of the federal agencies, 3 of the 4 agencies represented on stage, because I went to Antarctica. Thank you very much. It's really interesting to meet, and all of the projects were extraordinarily interdisciplinary. And it's interesting to me to hear about this question of siloization. I get to ask the first question, and then I'll throw it open, because we're working so hard on our campuses to get beyond that. And yet, I don't see a lot of interactive work among the different federal agencies. So I'm wondering if the people who are representing these agencies funding within their own bodies really interdisciplinary work have any vision for a future in which the agencies are reaching out to each other more than they are now across their own boundaries to fund interdisciplinary work. Doug.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is where you get into the weeds of federal budgets and appropriations law, and all of this, any sort of interdisciplinary sharing of resources actually requires authorization from Congress. And if you followed how well Congress is working, you'll know that we actually only have until December 11th before the current continuing resolution goes away. But we had a great idea at the Arts Endowment that for our 50th anniversary, we would also celebrate the National Park Service 100th anniversary. And everyone was very excited. Everyone at the Park Service was thrilled. We were thrilled. We were going to have artists in residence in national parks across the country. And then the lawyers got involved. And they pointed out, likely it's their job, that we had no authorization from Congress to participate in this. So you do run into some real problems when you're talking about federal agencies collaborating on various projects.
But there are ways around that. You can submit multiple proposals. So submit something to NSF and something to NEH and something to NEA that bring in parts of the same project. Then you don't have to deal with all the legal political hassle, which is real. I mean, so I don't think it's likely that that's going to go away. So go in the back door. And there's nothing that keeps a group from submitting parts of the same project to different agencies. Jason?
Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yeah.
At ODH and NEH as a whole, we've been working really hard to actually foster these sort of cross-institutional collaborations. And so some of the things that we've been working on, including digging into data, which includes 3 U.S. funders. It's the National Science Foundation, NEH, and IMLS, which is the Institute for Museum and Library Services. We also have a shared program with NSF called Documenting Endangered Languages, trying to preserve languages, indigenous languages and cultures. We also have done a lot of work internationally with the Germans, with the British, the Netherlands, and increasingly across borders. I will agree with Doug. In some ways, it's much easier to work with international partners than it is to work through the barriers that the federalized system, the federated system, sort of sets up for working across, although there's ways to structure grant mechanisms. I was on a working group actually with the National Science Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts, where we were trying to come up with new modes of fostering these interdisciplinary collaborations. And like all sorts of things, there's the sort of bureaucracy of it, but there's just some built-in friction in terms of the bureaucracy that makes it somewhat challenging. But we are able to fund small things sometimes, oftentimes just by bringing partners together, by bringing folks together. So, for example, we funded a a workshop at the University of California, Santa Cruz on media systems. And it was looking at the social, computational, media, artistic practices all built around computational systems, right? So everything from video games to sort of artistic and computational practice in film and so forth. Small but very productive. And one other way that we're trying to investigate is across the borders of methodologies. So, you know, there are artistic, scientific, and humanistic uses of things like geographic information systems. And there's the same we just funded with the Sloan Foundation and IMLS and some others, a crowdsourcing, a CrowdCon. So looking at crowdsourcing across all the disciplines and domains, and how that method brings multiple people together.
Yeah, Lori, and then I think, Glenn, did you have your hand up? Awesome.
Well, I just wanted to bring up a couple things that I'm aware of, and maybe you guys can speak more articulately about them. I am aware of the Healing Arts Partnership between the NIH and the NEA working with military veterans. And in talking to Bill O'Brien at the NEA, he wears it like a badge of honor. You know, I mean, it's to make visible the invisible wounds of war. So he's working with PTSD and veterans who have returned, as well as, you know, veterans who have lost limbs. They're looking at military sexual traumas, and the results of this, you know, they're working with visual artists doing masks. They're working with literary artists, you know, doing written word. They're working with theater. And the military doesn't care that these are all different divisions and that one hand isn't talking to, you know, the other hand. I mean, it's really about healing our veterans, and they're looking at expanding that program. It's been so successful. And so a couple other things is there is an interagency task force as well that was started back in 2010, and it was with the NEA Arts and Health and Human Development, and I think Sunil Iyengar runs that, and he does quarterly kind of webinars around arts and medicine. And that's something, you know, the conversation that happened in 2010 was a very interesting moment in our times as artists with the federal agencies, where there was this conversation between the NSF and the NEA, and there was 55 people that convened in Washington to kind of map this way forward. And the NSF actually sponsored 2 very robust initiatives that included arts and design to the tune of like $20 million. You know, so that's where the spawn of SEED came. So science, engineering, art, and design, or XSEED, or NSEED. These different acronyms that have kind of popped up in the last 5 years that are pushing arts and design into the forefront of science and technology. So I think there has been a history. You know, what we're dealing with right now is that I think the criteria needs to be changed, right? So if you look at the criteria for getting an NEA grant, it's artistic merit and it's artistic excellence. If you look at the criteria for getting an NSF grant, it's broader impact and intellectual merit. Well, you can't, you know, you can't get the same grant if you're working from different criteria. I don't know if Doug could speak to that, or?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, it's an interesting project that we've got going with Walter Reed, and it